Interesting.
Hey, security peeps. We are live again with another edition of Breaking into Cybersecurity. We are here. This is a special edition here with two phenomenal people, as we usually are. I am Renee Small. I am a cybersecurity super recruiter who helps awesome cybersecurity professionals get into opportunities and wonderful leaders hire awesome professionals. My podcast co-host, Chris. Say hi to the people. Hey, Chris. And our awesome guest for today, Jason Blanchard. Say hi to everyone, Jason.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here today.
I'm super excited. We've been trying to make this happen for a couple months, I think now.
Yeah, I think so.
So Jason is the content community director over at Black Hills Cybersecurity. So Jason, I was just saying that I love that title. Tell us what you do. Jason's been doing some awesome stuff in regards to helping people get jobs. So tell us what you do. How did you get into this crazy space? And tell us about what you've been doing to help people get jobs.
Let's see. I'm the content community director at Black Hills, and part of my job is to create content and foster community. Like, that's what I was hired to do. And let me just double check you can still hear me, because I did something to my laptop.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Yeah, I was trying to get that ding to go away in the background.
We can hear you.
So back like a long time ago, I was a teacher at a film school. And by being a teacher at this film school, part of my class was helping people create content, but it was the very last class of the program. So imagine being in school for 2 years. You've gone through every single class. You want to be a filmmaker. And then you get to my class and we talk about how to create content from scratch. But at the end of my class, you graduate. So you transition from being a student to now a professional. And most of the college students had no idea what to do about that. And so our class evolved to not only creating content, but how to get started, how to find jobs. So back a long time ago, I started teaching people how to network, how to find work, how to use social media, how to do all these things. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but it was open source intelligence gathering. I was doing OSINT. And I was hacking, I was using a hacker mindset to find work. And I didn't even know it. I wasn't part of information security. I was in filmmaking and film school, but I would teach students. I was like, here's how to use the credits from a movie to find out who that person was. And then here's how to use IMDb Pro to find that person's contact information. And then here's how to use their email address. And if that email address is like that, then maybe another email address for the other person is like this. So maybe you can email the producer. And all of a sudden my students were finding work. The students back in film school were finding work. And then they would write me back and they're like, oh, I got this job and I got this job. And I was like, yes. And then when I got into cybersecurity and people taught me about OSINT and hacking and social engineering, I was like, wait a second.
I'm already doing that.
What if you just take this stuff and apply it to job hunting? And I gave this talk at DerbyCon a couple years ago on how to social engineer your way into your dream job. And I remember in the description, I was like, are you unhappy with your job? Are you unemployed? Or are you looking for something? Are you looking for a dream job? And it was standing room only in this room. And I was like, well, apparently this is a needed topic.
It's a thing.
And so I gave that talk, and then over the years, I think it's at almost 20,000 views, and people would write me and send me messages and say, hey, I found a job. And I think it was my wife and I were talking on Valentine's Day. We went out to dinner and she's like, why don't you write a book? And I was like, because I don't like to write. And she's like, no, that's true. You do suck at that. And I was like, oh, yeah. She's like, but you like to talk. And I was like, oh, of course I like to talk. And she's like, well, why don't you do a live stream or something? So long story short, we do a live stream twice a week. Tuesday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. and Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And it's all on job hunting. And it's using open source intelligence gathering, a hacker mindset, and marketing technology. Because I understand marketing technology because I do that. But it's how to combine those three things together to get the job that you're looking for. And that's what we do.
Wow. What are some of the main takeaways that you would want to share with the viewers of this podcast?
Yeah, so I would say I'm going to give 3 main takeaways. So the first main takeaway is have a list of what you're looking for before you start hunting. Like, and what I mean by that is if a job has a set of requirements for what they want from people, I think people should have a set of requirements of what they want from a company.
Absolutely.
And you talk to so many people that are like, well, I just sent out my resumes. This is the one that responded back to me. So I took the job and I've been unhappy for the last 5 years. Like,
well,
yeah, it's like they keep paying me, but I hate it. You're like, so apparently you don't value money as high as other things. And so is mission important to you? Is time off important to you? Is work-life balance important to you? Is remote important to you? Is 25% travel instead of 75% travel important to you? Is someone mentioned this the other day in a live stream, and I was like, yes, they wanted an organization that wasn't a get by and compliance organization. They wanted an organization that actually took security seriously. Yes. So that was on their list of what they were looking for.
That's a huge one.
And what happens is when you have your list and when you're in an interview and they say, well, do you have any questions? Like, as a matter of fact, I do. What's work-life balance like here? And they're like, well, and you can tell, and it's like, how valued is the mission? And I'm like, well, I've never actually had that question. Like, so you have a list of your questions, and just like, what we've learned is that human beings, when they see a job post, their imposter syndrome kicks in, and they'll see a list of like 17 things that an organization wants, and they go like, well, I only know how to do 3 of those, so I shouldn't apply. And I was like, nah, if you know how to do 3 of those and this is a place you want to work, then apply. Because just like an organization may not cover all 17 of your things that you want, they might only hit like 4 or 5, but you're like, those 4 or 5 are really important. So yeah, that's what I care about the most. And when you're applying, you're not a unicorn. Like, that's what job posts are. They're like, we want this unicorn. Like, unless you're this unicorn, don't apply, and that's not the case. So the first takeaway is make a list of what you want.
Okay.
And as you're hunting, you're like, oh yeah, this place looks like it hits a bunch. Do you have any questions on that before I keep rambling?
No.
Well, I wanted to just double down on the part that you talked about with the job description. And well, I think it's perfect what you just said. Having that list, being able to ask those questions. The questions come from the list. You don't have to think up, drum up new questions every time. Yep. Makes your life easier. Talk about a hack. And then when it comes to the job descriptions, it was so funny. We were talking about this just, I think, last Friday about the unicorn job descriptions, unicorns and elves, right? Somebody brought that up to me. They were like, by the way, I watched the unicorns and elves live stream and I cracked up. It's so funny because I think people seem to forget, and Chris made an awesome point about that last week about how when job descriptions are created, a lot of times it's some manager that it's a person that's grown in a role over years. You know, they came in with one skill set, then they piled in extra, they did this and this and this, and they picked up these skills over the years. So they're like, I want another Chris. It's like, well, Chris has been here for 5 years. Like, he came in as this, he's leaving as this other thing, and you're trying to get that. And so to your point, when you see 3 things on there and you're like, I'm not qualified, don't discount what you already bring to the table. So I just wanted to double down on that because it's so true. What you said.
Yeah. Second point is build your resume while you're hunting. And what that means is I hate a blank page. I'm a creative person, and you're like, Jason, this just happened at a previous organization. They're like, can you make this thing by Friday? And I was like, no. I'm like, no. I'm probably gonna have to think about it for like the next 3 weeks, and then write some ideas down, hate those ideas, scribble that out, start drawing something over here, completely hate that. And then eventually 3 weeks from now, I will show you the thing that I'm happy with. And so I hate a blank sheet of paper. So I had to create, I had these little things where I would write the words hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end. Like, I just write those on a blank sheet of paper, and I'm like, okay, here's a place to start. And I fill in those gaps whenever I'm writing or doing something. So when I say I hate a blank sheet of paper, I think most people start their resume with a blank sheet of paper. And as they're looking at the blank sheet of paper, they're like,
yeah.
So,
right.
what do I put? Like, they started like, well, I remember 7 years ago, I knew how to, and people just start writing on this blank sheet of paper, like, what do they do? So what I recommend is people you build your resume while you job hunt. And what it looks like is as you're job hunting and you put in the title that you're looking for, you're like information security specialist. Every time you come across an information security specialist job and you're looking through the description, the requirements of things, you're like, oh, I know how to do that. We'll copy that and then paste it to what we call a catch-all document. And a catch-all document is like, I have that skill and I have that skill and I have that skill and I have that skill. And even in the about section, like, we're looking for a person that's like this. You're like, I'm like that. So you can take that and then rewrite it to be, it's you. So instead of just looking at a blank sheet of paper and then trying to figure out all the things, start job hunting. And as you start job hunting, you start seeing all the things that people are looking for. And you're like, I know how to do that. 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 And then you can start filling and fleshing out your actual resume by job hunting. So,
yes, some of the other things similar to that is just think about what you do. What do you do on a day-to-day basis? Write that down. Use that as a master list of all the skills and things that you do. And then you can pull from that when you're ready to roles that meet those that are looking for those skills and capabilities.
Yeah. Because so I'll do LinkedIn profile reviews with people a couple times a week. And they're like, well, were you checking my LinkedIn profile? I'm sure. And we'll look at the about section. And in the about section, I always encourage the first sentence is the core of who you are. Like, no matter where you go, you're going to be the same person. So what is it at your core? And someone the other day had the best opening sentence. She said, I'm fantastic in the middle of a crisis, but I'm even better at preventing one.
Nice.
Awesome.
And I was like, that's so good. And like, yeah, because no matter where you go, like, there's going to be like that at my core is who I am. And I was like, that's such a good, opening sentence. So I always tell people, like, when someone gives you money, what do you convert it into? And so she decided I convert it, I'm great in the middle of a crisis, but I'm even better at preventing one. That's what she converts money into. But that's a part of the job hunt. And so if you're job hunting, job hunt for your current title and look at what people value. And so sometimes during those LinkedIn profile reviews, you'll see someone has like 3 bullet points and you're like, this is what I do. And you're like, is that all you do? Is it? And so when they job hunt their own job title, they'll see like all these requirements and like, oh, I know that, and I know that, and I know that, and I know that. And all of a sudden they're like, wait, I actually know a lot more than I actually think I do. So
it's such a good point. I mean, you spelled out with the job hunting or creating your resume while you job hunt. About 10 years ago, I used to have this course called Resume in Reverse. It's the exact same concept.
That's awesome.
Like literally, because especially when you're dealing with students, especially, people, the transitioners too, they might not really fully see where their skills transition. And especially with students, I would tell them all the time. I was in the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu's conference last Saturday. And we did like a resume hack, and it was exactly to that point. Like, you have, look at the job descriptions. Don't overthink it. Go to the job descriptions, and if you keep seeing the same, if you have it, I like your point of just put it in a working document. But in addition to that, especially if you start seeing the same thing over and over and over again, you really want to highlight it. You really want to draw attention, because that's something that multiple companies are looking for in this particular skill, in this particular type of role. So such really good points when it comes to that, and looking at and job hunt your own job. I love that. I love it. Like, look at what you're doing to see, this is not only looking at jobs for the future for what you want to go into, but what you're doing right now so that you can juice up your resume even more. So I love that.
Yeah, I did a job hunt for, if you were to actually say, the type of, I'm the content community director, but if you were to like, well, what's that mean in marketing? It's content community or it's content strategist. And so when I did a job hunt for content strategist, I was like, oh yeah, yep. Like, that is what I do. That's And so if I wanted to build out my own resume, that's what I would hunt for. It's content strategist. And then the last point I want to talk about, and then we can dive into if you want or have more time, is find an internal advocate at the organization you want to work for. And that's where the OSINT comes in. That's where the open source intelligence gathering happens. And what that looks like is, so let's say you're on LinkedIn, you find a job post, you take a look at all the things, you meet 5 or 6 out of the requirements, you tailor a resume to that specific job, and then it says the recruiter who posted it. And you're like, well, hello, magical job fairy. It's very nice to meet you. And then you look at that person and you're like, well, let me see if I can send a message. And there are so many recruiters where if you click on the message feature on LinkedIn, it just pops up and says, yeah, you can send a message. It's free. It's not an email. It's not anything. And you're like, okay. And what I like to encourage people to do is that when you go to a job post on LinkedIn or something and it says 14 applicants, you're like, all right, so I do not want to be applicant 15. I want to be a human being who's also applying with 14 other people. Mm-hmm. And what that means is by reaching out and introducing yourself or asking for an informal interview or just saying, I am a person who's also applying for this. I just wanted to introduce myself real quick. That all of a sudden, when that person's flipping through the other 15 resumes, they see a name that they recognize or they had a small conversation with somebody. And all of a sudden, you hopefully go to the top of the pile by the way that you introduced yourself and by standing out. Because I hate being applicant number 15. Like, that's not a thing. At the last job that I worked at, it was a Craigslist posting, and it was a first initial, last name with the email address. And I was like, well, let me go to that organization's website. And then I found their LinkedIn, and then I found that person, and then I just reached out and I was like, hi, I just want to let you know I'm thinking about applying. Like, it wasn't I applied yet. I was like, I'm thinking about applying. I want to see if this would be a right fit for me before I even apply. And the person was like, okay, like, you haven't even applied yet? And I was like, no, I just want to make sure that I'm not wasting your time. You're not, and that I'm not wasting my own by applying for something that's just not a right fit. But what I was really doing was introducing myself. Mm-hmm. So that way that I wasn't just another applicant, I was a human being. And so I encourage people to find 2 internal advocates. You find someone that works in the actual department that you plan to work in. If you can do that through LinkedIn by filtering down and finding if there's enough information to do that, and then reach out to someone who's going to be doing the actual technical work, and then to find someone that's a recruiter that may be handling that actual position. So that way you're covering both bases of here's someone that might be working in that department that I can introduce myself to, and the recruiter that I can potentially find more information out from about how to apply or at least get past the first initial part to get to an interview.
Do you also recommend that the person that's doing that role to informally interview them for culture and fit and all those items that were on your list to make sure that they really do check them off before you talk to the manager that might be inclined to positively sway all those things, whereas a peer might be more honest with you?
Yeah, we talk if you are able to get an informal interview with a recruiter or with someone that works in that department, and that's a 10 to 15 minute, request, like, hey, can we talk? I just want to talk. And in that first couple of minutes, you introduce yourself. And then after that, you start asking the questions that are on your list. You're like, what's it like to work there? What's it like for this? What's the culture of inclusion? What is this? What is your mission like? What is, and if you're willing to, I normally ask, what's 3 things that you love about your position, and what's one thing that you would change? And that one thing that you would change is where you really learn more about that culture and organization. But some people won't be willing to share that information on a very first conversation if they don't know you. But if you can work it in there. So.
Social engineering.
total social engineering.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I think I'm going to be I'm going to be watching, be on those podcasts later on, those live streams, asking questions. So I just want to shout out a couple people because people tend to come back over and over and over again, and we love it. So George says it's always great to stand out with your strongest attribute. Everyone likes someone who can prevent a crisis. When you talked about that lady's topic, you know, Jermaine is here. Hey, Jermaine, just talked to him the other day. Andre says, thanks for the unicorn discussion. That was a fun one. Michael said, good morning. George is here. He said, good morning. So, hey, everyone that's here. Thank you so much for joining. Please ask your questions to Jason. He is amazing at this. And he is getting a ton of people are getting job opportunities. But before we jump into that, Jason, quick question for you. How does one, so you made the point about the recruiter and reaching out to recruiters, and I'll tell you firsthand as a recruiter, a zillion people reach out to me about stuff. And it's just like, right. So you have multiple masters. So you have your hiring manager, you know, like your day job as an internal recruiter at a company is multiple people that you are kind of like, you know, they have you report to your recruiting manager or your recruiting director or VP, unless you're an internal recruiter of one, which is a whole different ball game. Then you probably report to an HR VP or something. Then you have your hiring managers that you are like constantly in contact with. So you always, and if most recruiters have 15 to 20 open positions, so you have all of this, and then and then you're managing the position. In some cases, in bigger organizations, it's split in half. So you have like a client-facing recruiter, and then you have a candidate-facing recruiter, which is cool. You have one person just 100% focused on finding a talent, and one other person that's really focused on managing the relationship of the leader. So with all of that said, recruiters are sometimes not the people to really try to help. You know, they can help you, but it's really, I think it's really, really useful what you said about getting to the hiring manager. So my question to you is, from an OSINT perspective, like, how do you find the hiring managers of some of these roles?
So a couple things is, one, when I if I see a job posting on LinkedIn, and we do these live job hunts, so it's exciting because you never know what you're going to find. So someone will come on and they're like, I want to work at Riot Games. And you're like, okay, let's do it. And you're like, so we'll go to LinkedIn. We'll take a look at Riot Games. We'll click on the jobs tab. It will show all the available jobs at Riot Games. And you start scrolling through and you're like, what about this one? You're like, information security analyst at Riot Games. You're like, cool. And then we start going through and we talk about make a list of what you want, you know, take a look at the job posting. What here do you actually know how to do? All that stuff. And then we go, all right, so here's the fun part. So the fun part is where we go to actual Riot Games and we click on the employees of Riot Games. And we do a filter. So you do a filter on Riot Games, and there's a tab for information technology and I think it's information technology and services. And when you click on that tab, all of a sudden it now filters out all the employees to only the people that work in IT. And you're like, all right, here we go. And you start looking through all the people that are there and you're like, manager, manager. And we right click that one and open to new tab. And we keep going through and we're like, this person does this, you know, right click, open new tab. And then you go to that person's page. The very first things that we look at is the contact info. Do they have a Twitter account? Do they have something else that we could potentially use for the OSINT gathering? From there, we take a look at their activity on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is a massive tattletale. LinkedIn lets you know exactly what you...
you like, what you clicked, who you commented on, everything.
Massive tattletale. And that's what we're looking for is, first of all, is this person active on LinkedIn? If they are active on LinkedIn, then that means you can use LinkedIn as a way of reaching out to them. If you don't see any activity at all, then maybe LinkedIn's just not the way to reach this person specifically. But when we look at the activity, that's that tattletale part that leads to stuff. So when you're looking through the CTO, you know, let's say you find the chief technology officer at Riot Games, And you're like, okay, let's take a look at their activity. And all of a sudden you go through the activity and they have a job post that they liked at Riot Games. And then you see the recruiter who posted it at Riot Games. And then you're like, okay, right click, open new tab. And then you go down a little bit further and you see that they liked someone that works in that department at Riot Games. And you're like, oh, who's that? You work in IT at Riot Games. Well, let's take a look. And so by looking at people's activities, and the other thing is when you go to someone's profile on the right-hand side, it says other people who've searched for. Mm-hmm. Like that's a massive like giveaway of like, oh, look at, there's the IT manager for Riot Games. And then, just that it takes us normally 15 minutes of OSINT or just looking through LinkedIn to find people. If we do find a Twitter account, it's on then. Because what we do is you go to Twitter, this person's Twitter account, and the first thing you look at is their likes. So you got those 4 tabs at the top. You got media, you got their tweets, you got likes. I always look at likes because that will let you know if that account's active or not. They may not tweet, but people like stuff on Twitter all the time. So if they haven't liked anything in 2 years, you're like, all right, this is a dead account. But if they like something in the last 2 weeks, you're like, okay, so they're still active on Twitter. So then here's the next part. You go to who they follow and you scroll to the very bottom of the list because Twitter is a chronological order of who you follow. Okay. And you get to that first 10 to 25 people on their list of who they followed. And that was like the reason why they chose to join Twitter in the first place. And so you'll see the people who influence them. And from there, you can start like, oh, look at that person works in the same department. Or you look at this and you find some other company that they worked for in the past. Like there's all kinds of stuff you can find in someone's follows. And then from there, you start sending the direct messages and things like that. And then, oh yeah.
Jason,
I didn't know that Twitter hack. I didn't know that Twitter hack.
Oh yeah.
Me either. I am taking notes, man. Yeah. I'll be back on here.
Yeah. And then, so like, if you want to get really deep into it, you can run targeted Twitter ads targeting the people who work at Riot Games.
Yeah.
Like this is some advanced stuff. But what's really cool is let's say it's Riot Games and there's the CTO at Riot Games and they have 274 followers. Let's say that. You can run an ad that targets the CTO of Riot Games with an ad that says, I'm currently looking for a position at Riot Games. You can tag at Riot Games. And then you can tag the CTO and you can put a link to your LinkedIn account in your tweet. And then you can run an ad for that will cost you like $2 a day potentially. But only the people who follow the CTO of Riot Games will see the ad.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's real deep. I'm gonna be Jason. Okay, what time are those classes again?
It's Tuesday nights from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then Fridays, so tomorrow from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And I committed to do it for 2 years. So like when my wife and I sat down and we talked about it, I was like, all right, I think I got to commit to 2 years of doing this. So that way, like I'm not, the numbers go up, the numbers go down. I just keep going. And so
awesome. So far, where do they find you? Like, what's the?
It's twitch.tv/Banjo Crashland.
Okay, Twitch. And
Banjo Crashland's the name I go by in Twitter and Twitch and everything.
/Banjo.
Banjo. BANJO. Crash CRASHLAND.
LAND. Okay.
And it's an anagram of Jason Blanchard.
So I'm putting that in there because I want people to join. I did it for them. I did it for me. So Stu says, I feel Jason and I think alike. I listened to his webcast on hacking your dream job and he came up with a bit more than I did, but we do things alike. I provided a 22-point paper for veterans doing job searches and was told it had some points vets had not thought of. So I was just happy to help. And Jason, we shout these out just because we're also on iTunes, and for people who aren't watching, they see these comments and stuff. Yeah. So Jermaine says, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. And he also says, true, so true, Jason. This is phenomenal. I'm learning stuff that I hadn't, especially when it comes to Twitter, because I'm always like, interested on how to recruit on Twitter, like, you know, like really coming up with a recruiting strategy for different social media platforms. So, you know, everybody, you know, LinkedIn is tapped out to an extent. And then you go to other places when I'm looking for so I'm thinking about the OSINT on the other side. Like, so not for looking for the jobs, we're looking for the people. This is very, very fascinating. And I think I'm literally, I now have you, I'm taking copious notes and I have your times written down. So you're going to see me in there waving my hand like, hey.
Absolutely. What's been cool is like, we have people that keep showing up every single week to the live streams. And I equate it to going to the gym. Like, because if you start job hunting and you start facing rejection and it's painful, like there's times job hunting is painful. And so what happens is you kind of need to keep showing up so that way you don't lose the motivation. So my daughter's telling me, I'll tell you in just a second, kid.
I know you have to run. Hey, Ben. Ben's here, another person that's here all the time. So I want to say hi to Ben. I know you have to run. So there was something that you want to talk about in terms of people finding jobs.
Yeah. Right? So we're up to 4 people who have found jobs so far. We've been doing the live streams. I think it's 3 months now. And 4 people, we had the 4th person came on Tuesday night and it was just like, it worked. And this is the important part. I don't do anything. All I do is I get on, I talk about these tactics. I show what it looks like. I show what you can do. I show this. I don't build resumes. I don't critique resumes. I don't call the people for anyone. I don't do the interviews. I don't do any of that. I just show some techniques and how you can do. And so for those 4 people who have done it and got over that, you know, the hurdle, it's like, that's awesome. There's people right now that are, the interviews haven't worked out great like they had hoped. You know, there's still people in the process. So just a reminder, I don't do anything. I just show people what's possible. And then it's completely up to them to do those things. And it's been really cool to watch. I remember the very first job that someone got was, you know, after like a month, and I was like, I think it's working. Yeah. So we just installed, and it's not installed, but we have this bell that we just found in our house that I got from Korea like 20 years ago. And so when someone gets a job now, we're like,
very cool.
So we're trying to ring as many bells as possible.
I love it.
So Jason, if you had to summarize all of the things that you would advise people for looking for a job, especially during a pandemic like we are right now, what one piece of advice would you give them?
A hunt.
Yes. Like
the mindset of a hunter is different than a person who scatters seeds and hopes for something to grow. Like a hunter like has the right gear. They think methodically about what they're going to do. They go out and then they track and they figure out the thing that they want to hunt, and they hunt it and they bring it back home. Like that's the mentality that we're looking for as job hunters, not job seekers. And I looked up the definition of hunt and seek, and it's the exact same definition except for one word. A hunter diligently seeks something or someone. And that's the one thing I want people to take away, is that be a job hunter, not a job seeker. Be someone that says, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to do to get it. And I'm going to hunt it until I get it, and then I'm going to bring it back home. And the whole family's going to eat it.
That's an amazing quote.
Yeah.
Such an amazing quote. Yeah. So good. So, Jason, I know you have to run, right?
I do. I got a live stream for Black Hills Information Security starting up in just a few minutes.
We have to get back to our day jobs, folks. Yeah. So, thank you so much for finally coming on. You will see me on Twitch for sure, folks. Twitch.tv/Banjo Crashland. I put it in Twitter. I put it in LinkedIn, and I put it in YouTube. Jason, thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much for hooking us up. And you got to come back when the next person. We want to hear what these people are. I want to hear about these jobs. This is
absolutely
like super exciting.
Yep.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Awesome.
Right,
thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks everyone for the comments.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.